Hello, everybody. We are once again here to help Gordon Dill with consumer expert Diane Lee. We're going to talk about your car, or maybe the roads, or what the roads are doing to our cars. Diane.
Yeah, that's right. All of us have driven over potholes and thought, oh, I hope that didn't do any damage. Sometimes it does. Here's what you do.
When a pothole or roadwork damages your car, it can be frustrating when you have to foot the repair bill. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee, and I looked into the rules of reimbursement and what you need to do to strengthen your claim. Talk about bad luck. Anthony Edmond in Belton had just decked out his Chevy Silverado in $700 apiece chrome rims when all of a sudden,
it was just a big boom.
Edmond, or rather his niece who was driving, had hit a major pothole on Highway 111.
I noticed the truck started to do a wobble sound, and it's wobbling. I said, okay, I think I may have a flat tire. So let's pull over and check it.
It wasn't just a flat.
See the crack in this rim, what it did to that?
The steel 22-inch wheel was ruined.
Even on the back. See what bent that on?
So Edmond filed a claim with the South Carolina Department of Transportation, but he got denied.
They said they was not aware that the pothole was there. I said, well, neither was I.
We have more than 41,000 miles of
Kelly Moore with SCDOT says each year they get 3,000 to 4,000 claims, approve roughly half of those, and pay out about $1 million in damages. What's the main reason that some of these claims get denied?
If the department wasn't aware of the issue on the roadway prior to the damage occurring, then we're not responsible for that damage claim.
So more drivers really need to report the potholes.
We really encourage folks to let us know.
Moore said there are cases where the road issue is so bad, car damage may be covered even without prior reporting. Is there anything they can do when filing a claim to make it more successful?
Yeah, I think the more information that folks can provide, any pictures that you can take of the damage, of the location, the more information the better in these cases.
And the SCDOT reporting page walks you through exactly what you'll need, including repair estimates and vehicle registration. Like Edmond, Stinson Ferguson was also stranded when she hit a pothole on I-26.
I felt absolutely deflated.
But she thinks it may be her thorough claim that included a full description, photos, rate of speed, and the weather that led to her success in getting reimbursed.
Put yourself in the position of the recipient of DOT. You're essentially submitting the equivalent of an insurance claim. Attached documentation. Everything that I stated in that letter, I provided proof of that.
When submitting a claim, you should also use the state's Road Finder resource to make sure it's a state road. But if it's not, SCDOT can still transfer you to the right county agency. Now, when it comes to work zones, any car damage because of road construction must be filed directly with the contractor of that zone, who bears full responsibility. If you don't know who that is, SCDOT will help transfer the claim. What happens if you've already fixed a pothole, but the issue comes back again and then affects someone's car?
Those are claims that are likely going to get approved as they go through the system because we're aware that there was an issue.
Edmond appealed his claim, but his bad luck continued.
It was definitely a tough pill to swallow because I'm a taxpayer.
Now, in case you're wondering, there's no public list to see what road issues have already been reported. That's something SCDOT only has internally. But you'd be wise to call the agency to ask that question and also ask for any help you need filing the claim.
Well, on that last point, Diane, I imagine one reason you can't publish a list of where the problems are is because that does open the window for some real fraud,
Absolutely. But it does raise the issue that if you do see potholes, you are very intelligent if you do call and report them, because if you don't and there is damage, then you cannot file a claim and successfully get any payment back. It has to be documented in their system. That's why you'll notice so many agencies, including SCDOT and even county agencies that you report those issues to, will come immediately and fill those potholes. I'm talking usually within 24 hours.
Well, because that's where their liability starts. Let's make sure I understand this right. So if I am the first person to have ever damaged my car on a pothole, or at least the first person to have called and said I damaged my car on a pothole, they can say, we didn't know the pothole was there, denied.
Exactly. And that's how the process works. So anytime you see a road issue, whether it's a pothole or perhaps some loose gravel on the side of the road that could get some car in trouble, or loose gravel that can come up at you, things like that, you're going to want to report that right away. Even if you haven't had an issue with your car, I recommend people report that because A, it gets fixed faster so no one does get damaged, but B, if anyone gets damaged and you've reported it, then they could obviously get that compensated.
You're helping someone else when you report it.
Right.
I suppose even if you didn't damage your car, you're doing everybody else a favor by calling and reporting a pothole.
Exactly. And I should say one thing. In the case of Stinson Ferguson, who we spoke to, she provided that excellent documentation. Some situations are such that the damage is so egregious that the SCDOT does actually take that into account and will cover some or all of the damage. So even if something hasn't been reported prior, if it was really kind of negligent or the road was in really, really clearly bad shape and they provided proper documentation and 2 quotes from different, mechanics and just really demonstrated how badly the car was hurt because of that, you might actually get some compensation. So it still is worth reporting.
I wonder, though, sometimes, we're driving all the time. We're on different roads all the time. You're in a hurry. Maybe you felt the pothole, but you didn't notice the damage to, in this case, a $700 rim, or maybe it just it led to the puncturing of a tire. It messed up your alignment. You might not notice that for a while. Does that mean you're out of luck?
I mean, yes, unless you go back and document. Wow. So you would really have to try to put 2 and 2 together. And it does take a little legwork, right? You'd have to kind of go back to the scene. You would have to take that photo, or at least in some regards, you can try to file that claim without the photo, but I think it would be less successful because you wouldn't be able to directly link that particular road issue with what happened. You're going to want to document it as quickly as possible after the actual damage.
I wonder, though, I raised that possibility of fraud there right as we started talking about this. How does the state know I actually damaged my car on a pothole instead of, I damaged my car elsewhere and, there's a pothole, let me call the state and see if I can get them to pay for it?
Well, the state fields a lot of these complaints, and they've gotten pretty good at sniffing out what type of damage is caused by what. So if you there's specific tire damage and rim damage and things like that that are more likely to be caused by potholes. You also have some damage that occurs where people call perhaps a company to tow away the car, or it's over on the side of the road, and it's another professional there who can cite that damage was likely caused by that particular road issue. So again, the more documentation and the more experts involved to also support your evidence, the better.
So, and we're talking about DOT predominantly here so far. But for instance, whoever's viewing this probably lives maybe in a subdivision or off a neighborhood, your apartment complex. Those may be county or municipal roads. So now is it the same sort of process, but you're calling sort of a county roads office instead of the DOT?
Right. Very similar process. Again, if you call the county, you have a pothole, they're going to come out and fix that right away. But you could also potentially submit a claim to them if that's on their record of having been, after a 24-hour period, if they still haven't fixed that and someone else is damaged. So you can see that there's not a ton of likelihood that given that time frame that they generally make these repairs, that someone would have that damage. And that's why a lot of these claims do go, uncovered. But there are a certain amount where, again, the damage is so bad that they do go covered. And Gordon, we have some material that we can show folks.
This is the DOT website.
We'll pull up the DOT because this is sort of the process of filing the claim. So you can see, do I have an eligible claim is number one. You're going to check for the damage that occurred. Was it on an SCDOT road? So we'll go to that Street Finder in just a minute so people can check that out, because I think that's a really helpful road, Street Finder rather. But the other ones you want to check, SCDOT must have known about the condition or defect before the damage occurred. So we've been talking about that point. And then the SCDOT did not correct the condition in a reasonable amount of time. As you can see, it's not a definitive amount of time. So there is wiggle room for your argument. Then if you check all those boxes on the left, then you would move to number 2 or 3, which is either submitting your claim via mail or the easy way to do it, obviously online if you have access to that. And they do request that you provide 2 repair estimates or a paid itemized receipt. So again, the more documentation that you can provide, the better.
Yeah, and that sort of qualifier there, fix in a reasonable time. I know that is kind of a blob word, right? Reasonable.
Right.
But to be fair, in the law, and I know you encounter this all the time on your stories with liability and that sort of thing, reasonable is basically the legal standard.
Right, exactly. And they leave it with a little bit of wiggle room there because, again, it might depend on how obvious it was that damage occurred there and how bad the damage was. Let's show people the Road Finder because this is part of it, the Street Finder. And the reason why I think this is such a helpful website for people to have is that I get so many emails, Gordon, from people about road issues in general. So whether it is damage that you might have received on your car or just wanting to figure out about construction and is that a county road, and maybe you want to complain about a construction issue, you can figure out which road it is exactly. So here you would do the drop down of counties, and I know, Gordon, our viewers can't see the drop down in our particular structure here, but you can, so just pick any one and it'll pop up.
Let's go to Greenville County.
Okay, excellent, great. You don't have to put in a municipality, that's not required, but you can put in a specific street name to figure out. So
how about a Haywood Road?
Okay, Haywood Road. So we're wondering, is that a county road? Is that a state road? We don't know. Yeah, so there you go. It has the S in front of it. And so that would tell you that this portion of Haywood Road is actually a state road there. So, and then, you can search different portions because sometimes it changes from, unfortunately, county.
They change names about 11 times.
Right. Changes from county to state. Another way that you can tell if it's county versus state sometimes is the actual look of the road sign itself. So, for instance, in Spartanburg County, you might have noticed this. Every single county road has a bird. I believe it's a red bird, red cardinal or something on it. And that delineates that it is a Spartanburg County road, and Greenville County has their own system. So the signs themselves can help you understand whether you are going to be filing your complaint with the county or with the state or with a municipality.
All right, let's get to this last thing I want to talk about on this issue, which is the idea of construction zones. You mentioned that briefly in your story. There are construction zones that seem eternal, like on I-85. I have no idea. There might be 11 contractors working on that section of road at any. There's the paving contractor, there's somebody doing the grading, there's somebody doing the site. How in the world am I supposed to know what contractor damaged my car? And
no one would, right? But here's what you do. You figure out what portion of that road it was impacted on. Then you go to, let's say you go first to the state because you are assuming that it's a state road, or you've used the Street Finder to figure out exactly which organization to reach out to. So in that sense, you're not yet filing complaint, but you're reaching out to the municipality or to the state or to the county and saying, I got damage in this construction zone. Can you please let me know the information of the contractor responsible for that construction zone that I can file a complaint with? And you would still need all the documentation that we talked about previously, but in construction zones, there's not as much of this rule that there has to be a prior issue reported, right? Because in construction zones, they're always changing. You could have a lot of loose gravel, and so you might be a little more likely to get a level of compensation for real damage, documented damage from a construction zone than you would from a different zone. For instance, I don't know if you remember, Gordon, I-85, when that was being repaved, there was a considerable amount, this was years back, but a considerable amount of loose gravel, and people were getting a lot of damage there. So they would file those claims, and some people did get compensated when they were able to prove that. Again, you have to have all the proof and mechanics saying that it was from loose gravel and things like that.
And it depends. I mean, you're describing what could be a lot of legwork for somebody. Call the state, find out who the contractor is, contact the contractor, get an estimate on the damage. But I mean, we keep playing on a loop. This poor fella's $700 rims for $700. I would make 3 phone calls.
Exactly. I mean, when you think about the cost of repairs, those rims, but let alone some damage to the car, I mean, that could run in the thousands, right? So if you could get that paid for, and you're understandably angry because you don't feel like you should have to pay for it, then maybe you're just driven by that good old consumer drive when you run into an unjust issue.
Yeah, we work in local news, so $700 matters to us, and I'm sure it does to just about everybody else.
For sure.
And before we go, you remember how he noticed the problem with this car? It was a wobble.
A wobble.
That's what he says.
A wobble.
Made me laugh I've watched the story 3 times. I laugh every time.
He was a good guy. We always appreciate people sharing their stories to help educate others.
100%. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with another way that we can help you save a little money and avoid scams right after this. And welcome back. We are still here to help. Gordon Dill with consumer expert Diane Lee. Have you ever gotten calls, Diane, from viewers who are just driven nuts by what seem like the craziest, smallest detail in their neighborhood, and they're at war with their HOA?
It's the worst because you're at war with your neighbors, and so you're lost as to what to do. Well, we tried to sift through how people can handle these difficult disputes.
Complaints against homeowner associations have become so common in this state, the Department of Consumer Affairs says it's the biggest growing category of all the reports they get. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee, and in this exclusive, I looked into how people can resolve many of these disputes before they get too heated.
This is where I had my flagpole originally at.
As a veteran who worked for months to clean up Ground Zero after 9/11 and fought for years in Afghanistan.
I lost 22 of my brothers in Afghanistan. Excuse me.
Michael Edge never imagined the battle he would face on his home turf.
I don't understand how my country can ask me to go to a foreign country and ask me to help people live the dream of freedom. Then I come here and 7 members of a homeowner association takes away my freedom.
It all started in 2018 when Edge was fined by the Glen Lake HOA in Boiling Springs for erecting this flagpole in his front yard.
I was ticked because I couldn't understand what's so offensive about flying the American flag.
As the fines added up and Edge refused to pay or take down the flagpole, the HOA threatened to put a lien on his home, so he took it down. But in 2022, he learned about the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act, which forbids HOAs from preventing its members from flying the flag. He put it back up with steel rods, and then
I knew the wind didn't blow it down because this is 50 pounds.
Edge says someone tore down the flagpole, and he filed this sheriff's office report.
You can always negotiate with the HOA.
Attorney James Stone Craven has handled many HOA cases from both sides, so we asked him to weigh in. Do the HOA covenants supersede state or federal law?
So no, they can't prevent him from flying it. It's the way he's flying it that they're probably taking issue with. Technically, if he brought this issue before the court, federal law would trump. And he may, if he had done so, won.
In a statement, the Glen Lake HOA board president, also a veteran, told 7 News in part, this issue was never about the flag or someone's right to fly it. It was always about our duty to uphold the Glen Lake of the upstate governing documents.
Well, I didn't want anything really big.
Around the same time, Simpsonville resident Kim Hicks had been dealing with her own HOA issue after she built a memorial garden for her daughter Kelsey, who she says died in 2022 from fentanyl poisoning.
She was the love of my life, and this has been the most devastating thing in the world, and I just needed a place to be able to go and talk to her.
The Neely Farm HOA cited bylaws that forbid structures or planting or landscaping without approval and told her to take it down.
I felt like my daughter's spirit was already there and I wasn't going to move it. So I requested a meeting with the homeowners association, and they did agree to let me keep the garden where it was.
That is, as long as she repainted and hid the bright colors, a resolution that Hicks appreciated. However, she had also put up this little library on her property, and for that, Hicks was hit with dozens of $50 a day fines.
I thought I was doing the community a service by providing information on fentanyl awareness and hopefully saving some lives.
Those fines and legal fees totaled nearly $4,500. Plus, Hicks had a lien on her property and a threat of foreclosure. Can an HOA foreclose on your home?
They're going to have a difficult time. Most people have mortgages. Most mortgage companies are not going to allow someone to foreclose upon their home.
Still, Craven says finding that lien before the 30-day deadline is crucial, or you'll have to pay up at some point, especially when you sell the house. To avoid legal fees, read the bylaws before making any changes to the exterior of your property. You can also file a free complaint with the Department of Consumer Affairs. But if the violation is in your covenants, you're likely out of luck. Neely Farms HOA declined to comment, but 7 News has learned they're considering Hicks's request to reduce the hefty fines. Meanwhile, Glen Lake HOA, who for years forbid flagpoles, has recently adopted an ordinance they say is in compliance with federal and state law, but still requires prior approval. Edge is now choosing instead to fly the flag at his second home outside the neighborhood.
They wanted me to ask them permission to fly the American flag, and so I'm not going to do that.
Now, if you have issues with your HOA, keep in mind, while rules are rules, the board can compromise. And the best way to accomplish that is to respond to complaints with a little humility and meet them in the middle. It could save you headaches and legal fees.
Yeah, I'm checking the time, Diane. This is going to take a while. This is a thorny one, especially since the people you interviewed in your story, we're recording this on September 11th.
Yeah.
And you've interviewed a man who helped clean up Ground Zero on September 11th and then served his country in combat, and a woman who lost her child.
Right.
So my sympathy for these people and the situation they're in is immediately as high as it goes.
Right.
And yet, right?
And yet, I know there is a yet.
There are rules. They moved into neighborhoods that have covenants with guidelines for living there. It almost seems like maybe they could have talked this out and it shouldn't have got that far, or had it already gotten that far before they reached out to you?
Oh, it had gotten very far before they reached out to me. And my number one advice is just what you're saying. Before it does get too far, just even in the beginning, reach out to your HOA. Many board members will want to work with you, but if you've already set something up, then unfortunately you're probably going to experience a lot of that backlash, and they're going to be looking at the black and white of the covenants, and you're going to be looking at the emotional state, and all the many good reasons you have.
Who's not rooting for a woman to move past the death of her child?
Exactly. And be able to have a spot that she can go to remember her daughter. Exactly. But she was a good example, Ms. Hicks, of having this dual situation where at first it was very bright and really truly did violate the covenant rules of not having the wrong paint colors. You're supposed to have earthy tones in that particular neighborhood. And so she sought out a resolution, and they said, okay, we're going to let you keep this outside instead of in the backyard, but we're going to ask you to please put the earthy tones back in. So she did have that compromise, and it did work. Let me just say, I can't remember in the story if I mentioned this, but in the backyard she had a dog. The dog, she didn't want the dog to mess up the garden. As we all know, dogs are going to mess up in the backyard when you go out there.
So let's talk about the flag. So there is a law that says my homeowners association can't tell me I'm not allowed to have an American flag flying. That's the law. But they can tell me, for instance, there are rules in the county that I live in. You can't put up a 70-foot flagpole in the front yard.
Right.
There are restrictions on that. So it's not necessarily, or correct me if I'm wrong, in this veteran's case, the flag that was the issue. It was how he was displaying it that was the problem.
And so that is an example of that emotional state getting involved, right? Because he focuses on the American flag and his right to fly it, which there is, as you mentioned, this federal right to be able to fly your flag on your home. But the HOA is focusing on how it's flown. Was the flagpole too big? Unfortunately, in his situation, something was taken into the hands of people who actually went and vandalized the flag.
That's a crime too, by the way. Vandalism is still a crime, even if you're in the HOA.
Right.
So that one, he has resolved to simply just not fly a flag at his house anymore?
Right. He has a second home. He's chosen to just show his, patrioticness there. But it is, it obviously has left a sour feel in his, mouth. And he also has a driveway that he's gotten even more issues with, because they said that he's extended it about a foot too much. And, so once you get an AOA issue, you might run into more because you've already established perhaps a contentious relationship with the HOA.
Exactly.
And here's the problem with HOAs in South Carolina, I think a lot of people, would agree with, is that they are unregulated to the point of not having any training for HOA members, and that they can sometimes be arbitrary, even though there are the black and white rules. There are, situations where some people are allowed this and some people are not allowed that, and I think that's where it becomes a real issue. And then in the state of South Carolina, the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, and Gordon, I think we have a website of them. They are the ones that take the HOA complaints, and they can help you mediate, but they cannot dictate dictate. And so they can hear out your complaint. They can tell you, make suggestions on what you can do, but they can't dictate. This site is helpful. If we pull it full, it does give people a lot of education. So if you are having HOA issues, you should reach out to the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. As we scroll down, first is sort of the education, those frequently asked questions about HOA. They have a PDF on that. They do have a warning before you buy. That really means make sure to read through your HOA documents.
Nothing more important than that.
Exactly.
Frankly.
And
know
no
what
one
the
wants
rules
to
are when
because
you move in.
their page is long and you're busy
Yeah.
and you're moving your boxes in, but you've got to make sure before you buy the house that you know what you're getting into. Are you allowed to put a yard sign of your favorite politician out there? Are you allowed to park a boat in your driveway? These are all things that people have fought over within their HOAs, and you don't want to move into a neighborhood and learn that you can't do something that's very important to you. So you got to make sure you know the rules.
And it's tough because in these situations, you are quite literally feuding with the people who live a door or two doors or three doors down.
Right. That's what makes it.
It's a real problem. And to your point, once that sort of animosity begins, you're right. Now you open yourself up to nitpicking on this on my shrubbery and nitpicking on that on the color of my on my siding or anything like that.
Exactly.
My neighborhood is having an HOA, the annual meeting, a week from Saturday, and they are doing the thing of electing new board members. To your point, it's not like there's a training course of how to be a member of this board or be on one of the committees. I wouldn't do it if they paid me $1,000 a week. What a nightmare job that is. I mean, I do have sympathy for the people who serve on these organizations.
Yeah, it's a very difficult job. And I speak from experience because back in 2015, I was the president of our neighborhood HOA.
Diane, why? Why?
And I had a 1-year-old baby at the time, too. So I don't know why I did it.
You did that to yourself.
Oh, I know. I had a 3-year-old. So I was like,
goodness.
yeah. But I think that people who do sign up in general, maybe they want, to help the neighborhood, or there's specific. I will tell you a full disclosure. We had a really old playground and I wanted to be helpful and get a new playground in there. And I thought no better way to do it than
Diane's got young kids and a pet issue.
Ulterior motive.
Very
right.
savvy,
No, but we
Diane.
got a new playground in Gordon, so we were good to go. Everyone was happy. No disputes there.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, I just wanted to say that people might think it's silly when I say there's no training, but the truth is there actually is required training, like a 90 days training in some states for HOA, for people joining HOA. When I say 90 days, I mean within 90 days of being elected, they are required to have gone through this training because as an HOA board member, you do hear a lot of sensitive information. You are learning the people that haven't paid their dues. You are not allowed to go around the neighborhood telling other people or gossiping about it. There's a lot of private information that you hear. So training is good, and the fact that our state doesn't require it is something that lawmakers are currently looking into as a possibility.
And before we go, boy, we are tight on time. I knew this was going to be a tight one. So the issue of money, we keep flashing a woman in your story, this poor woman who has lost her child. $50 a day is
horrible.
The assessment against her, which is a massive amount of money over time.
It is, and that's why I just wanted people to be aware that sometimes within the writing of these covenants is some pretty strong language on penalties, and if it is a covenant that has those daily rate penalties, the funds can add up really fast, and they did not work with her much on that. I'm just going to tell you that.
And what is their authority to collect upon those payments?
They can identify that she violated the covenant by having that house, that wonderful little reading library up there, and because it specifically doesn't allow that, they have their proof.
No, I get that they have something in writing that says we're allowed to assess this fine of $50 a day, but does that mean they can file they're going to call a collection agency to come after me? They're going to go after the bank, because you're right, almost everyone's going to have a mortgage, so that doesn't mean they own their house outright. What can the HOA do to collect $50 a day from
Glad you asked this, because even though we have a mortgage, they will usually put a lien on the house, and that's really bad because when you go to sell your house, that's where there's the issue. You really can't sell a home easily with a lien on the home. So as a homeowner, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to rectify it. You're probably going to have to pay that money eventually.
So or when you sell the house, you're just going to have to pay off that lien before you can get away clean. Boy, all right, Diane, I'm glad we talked about this. We might have to do another episode on HOAs.
Big topic.
So much to talk about. That is consumer expert Diane Lee. Gordon Dill, we are here to help. We'll see you again next time.